Good afternoon. Nicely done, and welcome to Folsom Lake College's Fall 2015 Convocation. Yeah. So we're going to kick off Convocation this afternoon with greetings from the Board of Trustees. And so I'm going to welcome to the podium John Knight, who is representing the Los Rios Community College District Board of Trustees. And you need to know a little bit about John is a longtime community leader. He served on the El Dorado County Board of Supervisors and on the El Dorado County Fire Board. Both of his children graduated from Oak Ridge High School, and they attended a Los Rios college. So please welcome John Knight.
Thank you, President Rosenthal, and good afternoon and welcome to everybody. And actually, not only did they go to a Los Rios campus, they actually ended up graduating from college, which was really actually more important than anything else. But again, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, it is a pleasure and honor to be here with you today to launch the fall semester for the 2015-16 school year here at Folsom Lake College. As one of your trustees, it is very meaningful and personal to be invited to celebrate the new school year here at Folsom Lake College. This is a beautiful campus, as for those that have been around here for quite some time know what it was like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the educational economy of this region depends upon it, as well as the city of Folsom. Convocation is an enjoyable mix of seeing familiar faces and meeting those who are new to the district. For you new ones, I know how you feel. Congratulations and welcome to this fine family. I hope we will see more of each other in the weeks and months to come. This has been a particularly exciting year for Los Rios as we celebrate 50 years anniversary. Throughout the past half century, Los Rios colleges have educated more than 1.5 million students. That is a remarkable legacy we should and all be proud of for this role and the success that they've brought to this region. School years come and go, and so do the semesters, but your commitment to our students never fades. It never wavers. Remember, the ladder of success doesn't care who climbs it, and all of you have started so many students on that climb. So thank you for your hard work, passion, and perseverance. So it is my pleasure, and please join me in welcoming and providing a warm welcome to your Chancellor, Brian King, who will present his fall 2015 Convocation.
Thank you very much, John. Good afternoon. How are things going? Great to be with you. This is such a wonderful venue to speak with you, where we have this intimacy and a chance to have a conversation for a little while. And I know that just like it is for me, the final day before the start of the new semester, you feel like you're in a little bit of a whirlwind. Lots of stuff is going on, isn't it? And that doesn't even count the stuff in your personal life. Now, how many of you have kids who are back in school? That's the end of one whirlwind and the beginning of another one, isn't it? And here in Folsom, already in the second week. So lots of things going on in our lives. And we all have whirlwinds, both at home and at work. And what we want to talk about today is how to see beyond the whirlwind and focus on some of our wildly important goals. It takes a lot of discipline to do that. And technology theoretically helps lessen the whirlwind, right? Maybe not. How many of you have a smartphone with you? How many of you have it in your hand? Okay. A lot of you do. And there's evidence we may be addicted to our cell phones. Recent surveys said about 60% of people check their smartphone at least once an hour. How many of you admit that you do check your smartphone at least once an hour? How many of you are Googling this statistic to see if you can verify it? So we think about cell phones, it connects us, and as I look, I realize I want to take just a moment to introduce the colleagues from the district office staff who helped prepare the presentation and spend the day with me with Convocation. So if you'll just stand as I acknowledge you. Sue Lorimer, Vice Chancellor of Education and Technology. I don't want anybody else to feel bad. You know, Sue used to work here, so she has a fan club. Don't make Teresa Matista, our Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, feel bad. Teresa. Our General Counsel, J.P. Sherry. Vice Chancellor of Resource Development, Bab Sandine. Associate Vice Chancellor Jamie Nye. Our birthday boy for today is Mitchell Benson, celebrating a milestone birthday. Mitchell. And also, we're fortunate to have with us today our new CEO of the Community College League of California, Larry Galicio. Larry, nice to have you with us, too. Now, how many of you got back to your cell phone while I was making those introductions and took a look? How many of you have had your phone lost or stolen? How many of you? Okay. So I had my phone stolen a couple of weeks ago. Ooh, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? So busy day, and I was working late because our 16-year-old daughter was going to fly in at about 10 o'clock. So I thought I'll just work, and then finally I thought, well, I've been here long enough, I'll stop and I'll do a quick workout on the way to the airport. I did that, and when I went to take a fast shower, I didn't lock my locker. So what's the lesson so far? Don't work out. That's right. So the phone is gone, and how do you feel when your phone's missing? What do you think? How many of you are panicked when you can't find it? Desperate? Sick? Relieved? Anybody relieved when you can't find it? There's a little relief, and I found that when I didn't have the phone. But the immediate problem was I'm going to the airport to pick up a 16-year-old girl flying by herself, and I can't call her because my phone's been stolen. So I get to the airport, and as soon as I pick her up, I tell her the story, and she says, well, Dad, I've got to find my iPhone on my phone. So we logged in, and we found where the phone was, moving around the gym where it had been stolen, and then it stopped moving. So Celia says, what do you think my daughter says? Let's go find him. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah. She's 5'4" and 110 pounds. So truthfully, she wouldn't be much help if we did find the thief. And being a good father, I take her home, then call the police, and they say, well, if you have an address, we'll meet you there. So I drive back in, and it stopped moving, and it's an older phone, the phone that was lost, so you couldn't turn it off. So the thieves are figuring at some point we're not able to disable it. So I get there, and as it turns out, there's not one, not two, but 3 police cars there. And my phone is not that important. But the address is the address of someone who had a long record of felony convictions. So the police were interested to see what was going on. So when I get there, they had me describe the car. I roll down the window, and the officer comes and says, do you have, let me see, we're fine that this is the right address. And then he says, now, they had already gone into the house. It was interesting to watch as I'm sitting there in the car. They knock on the door, they go in, they come back out, and he says, now will you hit that button that makes the sound? And you want to know what happens next? Yes. I'll tell you in just a few minutes. The whirlwind's all around us, though. Stuff like that is happening all the time in our lives. And finding a way to see beyond the whirlwind, even of the last few years, you think of the things we've been through as a district, where we're very proud, as we should be, of our bucket principle in allocating our resources for personnel. There just hasn't been a lot of money in the bucket lately. And the good news is, how many of you have more money in your account today than you did on Tuesday? So in a good budget year, we've been able to take care of our employees the way we want to. And John Knight's here on behalf of the board. Let's show John our appreciation to the board for their fiscal prudence and stewardship. Even in a good year, though, it feels like we have a lot of money, but we have to remember that there's caution on the horizon. At our spring convocation a few months ago, I talked about our liability, the costs we're going to have to pay for retirement in STRS and PERS. Anybody remember the number over a 5-year period on our ongoing operating costs? $16 million. So we are and should celebrate a good year in the budget, but also have to be aware of the reality that there are challenges ahead. Prop 30, which helped us in the worst years of the recession, parts of it are expiring, so we need to look at our revenue sources as we move forward. And one thing we're going to do this year is at each of our colleges have budget workshops. So how many of you have been with the district or the college 3 years or less? Okay, quite a few of you. How many of you are new this year? So we have a lot of people coming in, and it's really important that we help everyone understand the principles of budgeting that have allowed us to be a truly exceptional district. We don't want to lose that knowledge over time. California budget has those huge ups and downs, based very heavily on income tax revenues that vary wildly. We've been successful because our approach, while we still have ups and downs, we're more cautious in planning our budget. So we still have some ups and downs, but we don't have those huge shifts that happen at the state level. 3 quick reasons why our budget process works so well. We're always planning for the next downturn. We enjoy the good times and spend the money well, but we're aware that a recession is coming and we need to plan for it. It sounds awfully simple, but most districts don't follow this principle. We don't allocate and spend dollars until we have them in the bank. So many districts around the state feel the good feelings of the potential of money and spend it before it's here, and then when resources contract, they have to lay off staff and do other things that our district did not have to do in the Great Recession. And then the magic of our bucket approach in allocating resources for personnel. That a certain amount of money goes into what we call the bucket, and we have formulas for allocation for salaries. So a lot of organizations spend so much time arguing over compensation issues, and we have a system in place that is time-tested and very fair, so we're able to avoid some of those challenges. So the budget is one of those things. In good years, it's in the whirlwind. In bad years, it's in the whirlwind. It's always with us. But this year, I want to talk about one of our annual challenges and opportunities, access and enrollment. And it's a wildly important goal that we have to take out of the whirlwind a little bit and focus very specifically on providing access to students. How many of you have read this book? I really recommend Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis. I was listening to, what do you think? You like it? Bowling Alone was the book that made the author famous, and Bowling Alone is a book about the idea that people aren't doing activities together anymore. And Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis is about this idea that the gap between the rich and the poor keeps getting wider, and he goes back to his time in high school, how almost anyone who was willing to work could have a middle-class life without a lot of education, and now that is no longer true. And in the last 3 or 4 years, the top 1% income has increased by about 1/3, and the rest, the lower 99%, there really hasn't been any movement and some declines. So that really is why we do what we do and why we need to make sure that we provide access to as many students as we can, because we're on the front lines of closing that gap between the rich and the poor. So our goal is to serve students. That's what we do, and we want to provide access to our funded capacity. Now, I know there are years where we've been well over our capacity. There are years now where we're trying to meet the full ability of funding to serve students. But really the broad goal every year is we want to serve as many students as we have resources to serve. So we have to be responsive and nimble when circumstances change from year to year. In a year where there are more resources from the state, we have additional resources to serve more students. Anybody have a sense what percentage increase of students we could serve this year? Have an idea? 2% more than last year as a district. And there are variances between the colleges. Folsom Lake, for instance, with the center going online, we allocate additional resources for enrollment. But district-wide, we're funded as a district. So as a district, the goal would be to serve 2% more students than we did last year. And we've budgeted for that. We have resources in place, teaching resources and other resources to serve more students. So in terms of providing more resources, what do you think it means in our budget to provide access to 2% more students? What additional resources do you think come with that? It's about $5 million for a 2% increase. So our budget is large. 5% is not a tremendously huge percentage of our overall budget, but it is very significant. So we want to make sure that we are able to serve as many students as we can. So some of you see the daily enrollment numbers and look at them the way I do. How are we doing this year compared to last year? Are we up? Some of our colleges are. Are we up as a district, which is really the we that matters in terms of the bottom line? It's important to be looking at specific circumstances, but at the end of the day, what's happening district-wide determines the finances. So how are we doing this year compared to last year? We're down 0.1%, so I guess almost 0.2%. I'm glad that Teresa is helping with my math. So, rule 1 of holes, I say from time to time, is, what's the way to get out of a hole? Sometimes people say, I'm going to dig my way out of the hole. That makes the hole deeper. The first rule is to stop digging. So we're almost to the point where we're where we were last year. So that's positive, but that's not where we need to be. So the wildly important goal is that we're 2.2% behind where we are relative to the total access we could provide and the total funding available to us. So that two reasons why this matters. The most important is that students who need us are not here across the district and at each of the colleges. We have capacity to serve more students at all of our colleges with the schedule we have. And we leave resources on the table. If we don't provide access to as many students as we're funded to serve, there are resources that either go unallocated to any college or go to another college, and we want to make sure that we access those resources. And as I said, it's not a problem of not having adequate classes. If our classes were just filled to a normal capacity, we would achieve the access goal. So a lot of reasons why enrollment goes up and down. Anybody want to offer insight as to the number one reason why enrollment might be down this year? I hear jobs, the economy. If it's not number one, the improved economy and the ability for students to find jobs is one of the major reasons that impacts our enrollment. And course repeatability limits and other changes that have been made at the state level have downward pressure on enrollment. We have a long discussion about the pros and cons of some of the changes, but it does have an impact on enrollment. And we're also seeing that our old playbook doesn't work, that things we've done in previous times to rapidly grow enrollment and provide more access are working, but they're not working as quickly or as well as they have in the past. So the environment has changed and we need to be open to doing new things. So August 6th wasn't the beginning of the discussion, but we did bring people from all over the 4 colleges together to spend a day talking about the access challenge. So when do you think my phone got stolen? August 5th in the wee hours of the morning. So again, the whirlwind intrudes even in the wildly important goal. So back to the house where I'm ready to push the button, and I did. And the good news is we found the phone. The bad news, I've got a picture of it, but I actually have the phone itself. So that's what it looks like now. So the good news is the data wasn't stolen, but the phone is useless. And when the beeping went off, it still worked, and it was actually in a tree. So the thieves, realizing they couldn't turn it off, stomped on it, threw it in a tree, and they probably had no idea that it would ever be found. So we talked about what do you do without a phone for a while. And the new iPhones are coming out soon, so I didn't want to rush and replace my phone. So my 16-year-old daughter had a friend who had an iPhone 4, I guess it is, that wasn't being used. So at least for now, I have a phone. So that's part of the whirlwind too. And now I know what the icon looks like for Tumblr and Instagram, so I'm learning a whole lot about how teenagers use their phones. So on August 6th, we spent the day talking about how to improve access and increase access and had representatives from all of the colleges and the district office. And as I said, it wasn't the beginning of the discussion, but a way to focus the discussion. And it's not a discussion that ended on August 6th. We want everyone here involved in talking about how to meet our access goals. And the focus was on that WIG, which is to get 2.2% more students enrolled than we have now, and also to develop a plan for implementation. And I think we all know planning is not easy, but actually putting a plan into action is much harder. So figuring out a way to implement a plan on a wildly important goal is essential. And 2 areas of focus for this WIG on access is increasing persistence. And think about that. It's obvious but not easy. We know how many students we're going to serve in the fall fairly soon in the next week or so. If we could just have more of those students continue to persist from the fall semester into the spring, that would make a lot of sense in increasing access and also the likelihood of students succeeding if they persist from semester to semester. And also we need to find those students who need us who haven't found us yet. So helping students who are here do better and persist, and finding new students whose lives will be changed by what we do. So that goal again, every year is providing access to our funded level of capacity. That number will change depending on what's going on in the state budget, but the focus remains the same. And the time we have to impact the 15-16 fiscal year is really not that long because our enrollment will be set in the next week or so for the most part for the fall semester. And then we have a fairly clear idea at the first census date when we turn in our enrollment numbers for the spring on February 1st. So for the first time, maybe in our district's history, one possibility that we have to plan for is stability funding. What that means is when a college or a district doesn't reach the baseline level of funding, you have 1 year where you're funded at that level, you're held harmless, so you have some time to build up that capacity for access in the next year. And we want to postpone being in stability for as long as we can, but it's possible on February 1st we'll look at the numbers and say, we worked hard, we did everything we can, but because of all these factors in the whirlwind, we need to reevaluate what our budget plan is for 2016-17. Our board, as all of you know, have been very focused on prudent fiscal choices and are holding a special board workshop on September 2nd, not to just talk about access and enrollment, but to talk about the overall budget process and how it works. And as we pivot towards strategic planning for the district and the completion of our last strategic plan, we need to think really hard about being strategic and making decisions about enrollment for the long term. So, two other big projects that have taken place in the last 5 years in our whirlwind: accreditation. Have you heard anything about accreditation? It's been a big focus, and October 5th through 8th, we'll have peers and colleagues from around the region, around the state, and in some cases Hawaii and Guam, who will come to our campuses as peer reviewers. They'll look at the self-evaluation report we've prepared and will provide us some insights. And we have very thoughtfully planned our strategic planning process around utilizing the input from accreditation to make our next plan. And we're also concluding the 2011 strategic plan, and you have or will have, do you have at your place the document that looks like this? So that's a progress report from our 2015 strategic plan. Many wonderful accomplishments to celebrate. District-wide in the last few years, our degrees and certificates are up 10 to 12%. Our online courses are up 10 to 15%. And for fundraising, during the period of the plan, we've raised over $7 million in private funds, $25 to $30 million in grants. So let's give yourselves a round of applause. Many achievements reflected in the progress report. Now it's the time to pivot from our past successes and develop together a vision for the future and what we're going to do next. We do have a planning process for our district strategic plan in place. This fall, we'll select a consultant to help us begin the process and outline in greater detail how we're going to do the work together. Early in January, February, and early 2016, we'll have opportunities for all of you to provide valuable insights and feedback into the direction of our strategic plan. How many of you remember the 2011 plan where we had opportunities, charrettes, and other large groups where you got to come and participate? We'll keep that tradition alive. And then in the spring, at the end of the spring semester, we'll take the strategic plan to the board for approval and have the plan approved. How many of you get all excited about planning? Sue does. That's good to see. So when you think about Martin Luther King and changing the world, remember his famous "I have a plan" speech? The truth is that planning is important, but it has to be based on a vision that really hits us in the heart. So the process is about dreaming. And another really nice book is Start With Why, and I think President Rosenthal has talked about that at Convocation before, this idea that a lot of organizations know what they do. And if you ask what we do, we provide classes and educational resources to students. You can ask how you do it, and a lot of organizations focus on that. But remembering why we do what we do is what is catalytic in the planning process. So that idea of moving students from poverty to prosperity is exceptionally important. And the big idea is hard to implement, but not that complicated to outline, that in terms of access, we want to serve access. We want to provide access to the extent we have resources to do it. The number will change from year to year, but the calculation is fairly constant. We know what the state has available to us. We want to make sure we serve as many students as we can based on the resources. But access without success is an empty promise. If we are not focused with a laser focus on our students being successful, we're not going to realize our possibilities as an organization. And when we have access and success, we're providing the pathway to prosperity. So that's the why. We're changing our students' lives by serving them. So measuring success, when we talk about access, there are fairly clear measurements. For success, is it easy to measure student success? It can be very hard. And from a starting point, does it make sense that we ought to be thinking about what students say their goal is and whether or not they're achieving the goal they tell us they want to achieve? What do our students say they want to do? They want to get a job in some cases. They want to get a degree or certificate. They want to transfer. Our students have a lot of different goals. So when we start planning for what goals we want to achieve, we need to take a look at what our students are telling us they want to do and how effective we are in helping them achieve their goal. So completing the student's goal is what matters, and there are a lot of different goals. We're not going to talk about all of them today. We're going to talk about degree completion and start with our friends at Sacramento State University. The new president, Dr. Robert Nelson, is very focused on completion. How many of you have read an article or seen him talk about the completion goal for Sacramento State? Several of you have. So think for a second. The group of students that we're talking about at Sacramento State is first-time freshmen. So these are students who have enrolled for the first time, and their goal is to complete a baccalaureate degree. What percentage of first-time freshmen at Sac State do you think complete a baccalaureate degree in 4 years? What would you guess? 35? 20? 40? 25? 9% of Sacramento State students currently complete the baccalaureate degree in 4 years. And sharing this number is not to cast aspersions on our colleagues at Sacramento State. There are a lot of reasons why completion is hard. We could list a laundry list of reasons. The students are not prepared. They are economically working outside of college, so they're not able to complete on time. But Dr. Nelson is working on a graduation initiative where initially they want to go from 9 to 25 over a 4-year period. And I think it would be hard to argue that 9% is the finish line, right? So in hearing Dr. Nelson talk in his early weeks about this goal for Sacramento State, the question came into my mind, I wonder how our first-time freshmen do in degree and certificate completion. So again, this is not all of our students. This is students who have identified, they've checked the box when applying, that their goal is to earn a degree or a certificate. So it's not all of our students, and it's only first-time freshmen who have checked that box. So are you with me on who the cohort is? First-time freshmen, they've told us what they want to do is get a degree or certificate. So transfer students, students who have identified another goal are not in this number. So what do you think our percentage is? And we know that 2 years is very difficult. The benchmark we used as a comparison of some sort was 6-year completion for degrees or certificates. So first-time freshmen, 6-year window, they tell us their goal is a certificate or a degree. What do you think our number looks like as a district? 12% of our students receive a degree or certificate in 6 years. Now that doesn't mean we're not improving, and we already talked about the fact that we've substantially increased the number of degrees, but when we're looking at a goal for improvement, first thing we have to do is be really honest about where we are. And this sort of discussion doesn't answer the question. It really begins the discussion about how do we define what, in this case, degree and certificate completion looks like, what's the right cohort to measure, and where do we want to be? So the question on that topic would be, what's our wildly important goal to improve degree and certificate completion? Don't have the answer today. That's the type of thing we need to be doing together in our strategic planning process. Identify what's the appropriate goal, how do we measure where we are, and where do we want to be. So a meaningful goal, when you think about the elements, X to Y by Z. So X is where we are, Y is where we want to be, and Z is when we want to be there. Make sense? If you don't have all 3 elements, you're probably not going to get where you need to be. So how many of you, like me, would like to lose some weight? How many of you have ever been on a diet to lose weight sometime in your life? That's most of us. If I say, I think I'm going to lose some weight, how's that going to work as far as actually losing weight? I want to lose some weight sometime. You know, I might accidentally lose weight. Maybe I get sick. You know, there's no plan. But if I have a very definite goal, so I'll give you a really personal example. October 22nd will be my annual physical. What I don't want to hear is, you're doing okay, but it'd be nice if you lost 5 pounds. So October 22nd is the Z, that's the by when. Now, true confession, I had to change the first number, my X, because I wanted to be honest, and I weighed, and I had to bump it up a couple of pounds. So 214 was where I was on the scale, 12:30 a.m. Wednesday night. So to get to the 5-pound goal, I would be at 209 by October 22nd. Make sense? As far as an X to Y by Z goal? Now I know you will, so I'll tell you it's okay. If you want to email me on the 23rd and say, did you make it or not? And I'll tell you the truth. To achieve the wildly important goals, we need good tools. And the weight loss example is a good one. Weight's not the only measure of health, is it? May not even be a particularly good one, but it is somewhat indicative of your overall health. So you need the right tools and need to be measuring the right things. And for about the last year, our district has been partnering with Civitas, and we are rolling out the first application called Illume. And what Civitas and Illume will do for us is give us a level of detail in making our planning goals and measuring them that we've lacked before. So a quick example of how we can use the data from Civitas, persistence. We talked about that being one of the 2 areas of focus to increase access. Do you think it matters when a student enrolls, whether they're going to persist from the fall semester to the spring semester? See a lot of heads nodding. When do you think is the sweet spot? February. I mean, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. So this chart shows on the right-hand side, starts at 150 days before the start of classes, and 0 is the first day of classes. So green means a student persists. So, over here, 10% of students who enroll 100 days before persist on the green line, and the red line would be slightly less. What we're looking for in a graph like this is a big variance between the red and the green. When is something happening significantly? So the spike up you see is somewhere between 25 days and the first day of classes. See that red spike up? So persistence is going down when the red line goes up. Are you surprised? No? Are you surprised? Did anybody know, though, that that's where it was? We might have had a sense. Anyone who's taught has a pretty strong sense that what this shows is after day 1, students are not going to persist at as high a rate as if they would have enrolled earlier. But it also shows us that something's going on 25 days to the first day of classes that isn't good in terms of persistence either. So now we've narrowed down where the window is for our area of focus. Does this tell us what to do? Does it tell us how to do it? It doesn't. But it's a level of granularity in data that's very different than what we've had before. And the next slide is for one of our colleges, and look at the top. Same trend, how many days out did a student enroll? Did they persist or not? But this time we've sliced it down to one of our colleges, students 18 to 19. And you see some of the same patterns, but something's going on between 50 days and 25 days for this group of students that looks a little different than the overall student body district-wide. So you're going to have a tool at your college to look specifically at what's going on at your college within specific demographic groups by age, by ethnicity. We can look at Latino students, African American students. We can look at students under 40, students over 40, and look at what is happening very specifically for those students. So I'm excited about the potential of Civitas to give us data at a level we haven't had before, to be able to slice and dice a way we haven't been able to before, and to do it more quickly, that you can almost be looking at real-time data and questions that might have taken days or weeks. You can have some data on the spot. So data is important to make good decisions, but the broader idea about our mission goes back to changing the lives of our students. And I like Putnam's summary in Our Kids, the Crisis of the American Dream. Community college's potential is greater than that of any other institution in our culture today, because our concern is with the people most in need of assistance. Those are our students. We're dealing with the people most in need of assistance in our culture. If community colleges succeed in moving even a slightly greater proportion of their students towards achievement, it is as though we change the world. I mean, think about that. We don't have to improve 100% overnight to change the world. We just need to make small improvements along the way to continue to have the impact on students that you already are having on students every day. So I want to close with a student from Folsom Lake College. Anybody recognize this smiling face? Several of you do, and if you Google Chanel Sadler and I Can Afford College. He's featured in the statewide I Can Afford College campaign, and the video is just beautiful. So if you need some encouragement over the weekend as you prepare for students arriving, go look at her video. And her story is that not unlike that of many of our students, that she was a single mom with 2 kids who was homeless. She had no idea how she was going to break that cycle. And through financial aid and being enrolled at Folsom Lake College, she's now on track to complete her associate's degree, transfer to a 4-year college, and her life has been transformed. So give yourselves a round of applause for the impact on this student. And I know that every one of you have a story like that of a student you've interacted with where you saw that there was a fork in the road for them, and because of the impact you and your colleagues had, they're in the right direction and are going from poverty to prosperity. So I know there are many, many stories like Chanel's. And we have 50 years of student success stories as a district. Los Rios is now in its 50th year. We're celebrating a 50th anniversary. And I want you to mark October 23rd on your calendar. Now, earlier, all of you acknowledged that you have some money you didn't have before, right? Here is a great way to spend just a little bit of that money you didn't have before. For the first time in our district's history, we're going to have an honors and awards gala. And we're going to honor outstanding alumni from all 4 of our colleges. We're going to honor outstanding philanthropists, so people who have been very generous in giving. And our other 3 colleges, I'm pretty sure, are going to be well represented. So if you're not there, you want to step up, right? So that's going to be a wonderful opportunity to celebrate all the many success stories and spend some time together as a district. And at the same time, we'll be looking at our strategic plan. So I think the validation of seeing all the good work already done will be very powerful. So it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. And I know that there are things that I'd like to hear from you and need to hear from you. So please feel free to shoot me an email anytime. If you have a great student success story that you'd love to share, I'd love to hear that. Or if there's something that I've said that you think there's a better way I could say it, I always like to hear that too, because in this setting we don't have a chance for a lot of dialogue, but I want that dialogue to continue throughout this semester. So thank you for the good work you do. Thank you for the good work you're going to do in changing the lives of our students. So I wish a wonderful semester for all of you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.